Part 1. The Man Who Didn't Speak Hook. In a crowded office in downtown Chicago, people talked loudly, moved quickly, and competed fiercely to be heard. But one man, Thomas Keller, barely said a word. And somehow, he was the most powerful man in the room. Most people never noticed him when he walked in. He didn't wear flashy suits or carry a loud voice. He didn't shout during meetings. In fact, Thomas rarely spoke at all. But when he did, the whole room would go quiet. People leaned in. Heads turned. Because they knew, when Thomas finally opened his mouth, he didn't speak nonsense. He spoke impact. Now you might ask, how does someone like that become the head of a $1 million firm without ever raising his voice? The answer lies in one powerful idea, one that most people miss in their rush to be noticed. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is strategy. Thomas had learned this from his mentor, a retired Navy admiral named James Woodson. When Thomas was just a 22-year-old intern, hungry, ambitious, and always ready to prove himself, he once asked, "Sir, how do I get people to listen to me? I feel like no one sees me." Woodson leaned forward, looked him straight in the eyes, and said, "Speak less, do more. The world doesn't remember the loud, it remembers the focused. Silence is your weapon. Learn how to use it." That one sentence changed Thomas's life. Why silence wins? Let's face it, our world is addicted to noise. Everyone wants to talk. Everyone wants attention. Social media screams for your time, coworkers talk over each other in meetings, and even the news is louder than it needs to be. But noise doesn't equal power. In fact, the louder people get, the more they reveal about their fears, their weaknesses, their lack of control. Thomas realized this early. He saw that the most successful people in any room weren't the ones doing all the talking. They were the ones watching, listening, waiting. You've seen this too, haven't you? Think about the most powerful people you've ever met. They didn't brag. They didn't over-explain. They didn't interrupt. They didn't need to. True power doesn't announce itself. It's felt. The cost of speaking too much. Every time you speak without purpose, you give something away. Your thoughts. Your emotions. Your strategy. Your edge. That's what Thomas learned the hard way during his first big presentation. He was fresh out of business school and eager to impress. He spoke for 15 straight minutes, listing every idea he had, trying to sound smart. When he finished, the room was quiet, but not in a good way. The senior executive, Mr. Langford, looked at him and said, "You told us everything, Thomas. And that tells me you have nothing left." Ouch. That day, Thomas learned that information is currency. And the more you give away freely, the less you have to leverage. The real winners don't overshare. They understand, plan, and act, in that order. Powerful people wait. Thomas started changing his approach. Instead of rushing to speak, he paused. He watched. He listened to what others weren't saying. He noticed who was insecure, who was bluffing, who was overcompensating. In silence, he saw more. He adopted what he called strategic silence. It wasn't just about being quiet. It was about being intentional. He'd walk into a meeting and say only what needed to be said, nothing more. And his words hit harder because of that. When others spent energy trying to win attention, Thomas conserved his. He stayed calm under pressure. And when he finally spoke, people listened. Because they knew it mattered. Purposeful silence builds power. This wasn't just about meetings. Thomas also practiced silence in his personal life. He turned off his phone for an hour each morning. No news. No notifications. Just thinking. He used that quiet to reflect on his goals, his actions, his mindset. He journaled. He planned. And in that quiet space, ideas came to him that never could have emerged in the noise of daily life. Remember this. Great ideas don't shout. They whisper. And you can only hear them in silence. Some of history's greatest minds knew this well. John F. Kennedy blocked out time to sit and think, alone. Andrew Carnegie had a special room just for thinking. Muhammad Ali didn't win fights in the spotlight. He won them in the silent hours of training when no one was watching. Silence versus insecurity now. Don't confuse purposeful silence with fear. There's a difference between being silent out of insecurity and being silent out of strategy. Thomas wasn't quiet because he was scared. He was quiet because he was in control. That's the mindset you must build if you want to win big in today's loud, distracted world. Don't speak because you can. Speak because it counts. Make it practical. Your silent advantage. How can you apply this in your life? 1. Speak last in meetings. Let others show their cards first. You'll know more when it's your turn. Point 2. Create a daily silent hour. No distractions. Just thinking, planning, or reflecting. Point 3. Listen twice as much as you speak. The more you listen, the smarter you become. Point 4. Stop explaining yourself to everyone. Let your results speak. They always shout louder than words. Thomas Keller rose to the top not by shouting his way there, but by mastering the art of silence. His story is a reminder of something powerful. You don't need to be the loudest to be the strongest. You just need to be the most focused, and focus lives in silence. Part 2. The Quiet Room and the Man Who Mastered Himself. Hook. There was a quiet room at the back of Thomas Keller's house. No phone. No laptop. No TV. Just a leather chair, a small window, and silence. And it was in that room, not in any boardroom or business school, that Thomas built the mindset that made him unstoppable. Thomas Keller didn't always have control over his emotions. He used to be the kind of man who snapped when criticized, got anxious in silence, and panicked under pressure. But everything changed the year he turned 30, the year he learned that success wasn't about noise, hustle, or even talent. It was about mastery over yourself, and that mastery only comes from silence. The day Thomas lost control, it happened during a high-stakes negotiation. Thomas was presenting a deal to a room full of sharp investors. Halfway through, one of them interrupted him. "This idea feels half-baked," the man said, his voice cold. "Are you sure you're ready for this level?" That one comment lit a fire inside Thomas. He instantly jumped in to defend himself, talking faster, louder, trying to sound confident. But the more he spoke, the worse it got. The room smelled fear. The deal fell through. That night, he sat alone in that quiet room at home, asking himself the hard questions. Why did I react so fast? Why did I give away my power so easily? And then he remembered something his mentor once told him. Master yourself in silence, or the world will master you through chaos. The silence that reveals the truth. Thomas began spending time in that room every morning. No phone. No podcasts. Just stillness. At first, it was uncomfortable. His mind raced. He felt bored, restless, even anxious. But slowly, something changed. In the silence, he started noticing things about himself. How quick he was to defend. How badly he wanted approval. How many of his decisions were based on fear, not strategy. And that was the turning point. Because here's what no one teaches you in school. You can't master your business, your relationships, or your goals until you master yourself. And you can't master yourself without silence. Why silence builds self-mastery? Let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat with just your thoughts? No phone, no TV, no scrolling, no talking. Chances are, it's been a while. And yet that's exactly where the real work begins. Because in silence, there's nowhere to hide. Thomas realized that silence stripped away all the noise of the outside world and forced him to listen to his inner world. He discovered something powerful, that most of his stress came from reacting too quickly, that most of his mistakes came from speaking before thinking, that most of his insecurities came from comparing himself to others. And with that awareness, he began to change. The practice of the pause. Thomas developed what he called the pause. It was simple. Whenever he felt triggered by criticism, by stress, by uncertainty, he trained himself to stop and take 3 deep breaths before saying anything. At first, it felt weird. Like he was wasting time. But then something amazing happened. Instead of reacting emotionally, he began responding strategically. That little pause gave his higher self time to take control. It kept him from spilling his strength through useless words or emotional outbursts. That's when he understood. Self-mastery isn't loud. It's silent. It's not seen. It's felt. What Carnegie and great minds knew. Thomas wasn't the first to discover this secret. Andrew Carnegie, one of the wealthiest men in history, had a silent room in his home where he went just to think. No interruptions. No meetings. Just mental stillness. He credited those quiet hours with shaping many of his best business decisions. JFK blocked off time in his presidential calendar just to sit and reflect. Because he knew leadership without clarity is a recipe for disaster. And Einstein? He said words and language had little to do with how he thought. He relied on images and feelings, something that only emerges when the mind is quiet. The world's top thinkers didn't shout their way to success. They sat in silence until the answer revealed itself. Silence and emotional power. The next time you feel triggered, whether it's someone doubting you, criticizing your idea, or pushing your buttons, remember this: the strongest people don't react. They observe. They process. And then they respond, with power, not panic. Thomas learned that real strength isn't in snapping back. It's in not needing to doubt. He once walked out of a board meeting after being insulted by a rival CEO. A younger colleague asked him, "Why didn't you defend yourself?" Thomas smiled and said, "Because I don't waste energy proving who I am. I let my results do the talking." How you can build self-mastery today. You don't need a fancy leather chair or a high-rise apartment to start this. You just need a little space and a little courage to sit with yourself. Here's how to begin. 1. Create 15 minutes of daily silence. No input. No sound. Just you and your thoughts. Point 2. Practice the pause. Before responding to anything emotional, take 3 deep breaths. Point 3. Observe your thoughts without judging them. Don't try to fix everything. Just notice what's there. Point 4. Let discomfort teach you. If sitting in silence makes you anxious, good. That's the edge where growth begins. Final thought: from noise to mastery. The world is full of noise. Full of people reacting without thinking. Speaking without pausing. Living without awareness. Don't be one of them. Be the one who masters yourself in silence. So when the world tries to shake you, you remain steady. Thomas Keller went from a reactive, stressed-out employee to a calm, confident leader. And he didn't get there by shouting louder. He got there by listening to the only voice that matters, his own, in silence. End of Part 2. Next. How to let your mind discover hidden opportunities. Part 3. Part 3. The walk that changed everything. Hook. One rainy morning, Thomas Keller left a meeting halfway through and just started walking. No umbrella. No phone. No destination. For the first time in weeks, he had no plan. No answers. Only questions. But by the end of that silent walk, he had a breakthrough idea that would earn him millions. Thomas didn't plan to have a revelation that day. In fact, he was frustrated. He'd been wrestling with a problem for weeks. His team had hit a wall on a major product launch. The data didn't make sense. The market signals were confusing. Every expert had a different opinion. So, Thomas did something most people never think to do. He walked away. Not forever, just for a while. Out of the meeting. Away from the charts. Away from the noise. He walked in the rain without earbuds, without distractions. Just him, his thoughts, and the sound of his footsteps. That walk, that quiet space, triggered something deep in his mind. The quiet mind reveals what noise hides. Most people think opportunity is found in hustle, speed, and always doing more. But Thomas learned something different that day. Breakthroughs don't scream. They whisper. And you can only hear them when your mind is quiet enough to listen. While the world around him obsessed over information, debates, and constant productivity, Thomas learned to step back. Not to quit. Not to procrastinate. But to let his deeper mind go to work. Strategic incompletion. The power of not finishing. Thomas had read once about something called strategic incompletion. The idea was simple but profound. When you're stuck on a tough problem, stop trying to finish it immediately. Let it rest. Walk away from it on purpose. Do something completely unrelated, like walking, showering, or sitting in silence. It sounds counterintuitive, but it works. Here's why. Your conscious mind is limited. It's great at solving step-by-step problems, but it struggles with big, creative leaps. That's where your subconscious comes in. While you're walking, relaxing, or even sleeping, your subconscious continues working behind the scenes, connecting dots you didn't even realize existed. That's what happened to Thomas on that rainy walk. He wasn't thinking hard. He was just letting go. And suddenly, the answer popped into his mind, not all at once, but in pieces. A new direction, a clearer product message, a better customer segment. He rushed home, jotted everything down, and within weeks, his team was back on track, stronger than ever. Silence is a competitive advantage in a noisy world. Everyone's looking in the same direction. Everyone's chasing the same hot trend, reading the same headlines, talking in circles about the same tired problems. But the real winners? They step outside the crowd. They explore the quiet places. They see what others overlook, because their minds are calm enough to notice. Thomas once told his team, "If you want to beat the market, stop watching it every second. Go where it's quiet. That's where the gold is." And he meant it. Because in silence, you don't just react, you see. You connect patterns. You spot holes in logic. You notice what's missing. That's how opportunity works. It lives between the noise. In the gaps. In the stillness. Creating your own quiet spaces. You don't need to live in the mountains or take a retreat to find silence. You just need to be intentional. Thomas made 3 key changes to support a quiet mind. 1. He designed a room for thinking. No clutter. Just one chair, a notebook, and a window. 2. He banned noise during problem-solving. No music. No meetings. Just focused work or deep reflection. 3. He built silence into his schedule. Each morning, he gave himself 30 minutes to sit quietly before touching his phone. At first, it felt unproductive. But soon, he started having his best ideas during those quiet moments, ones that never came during busy hours. The more still the surface, the clearer the reflection, building inner strength through disciplined silence. But silence didn't just help Thomas think better. It made him stronger. He learned that when you sit in silence, you're forced to face yourself. Your doubts. Your fears. Your unfinished business. Most people run from that. They reach for a screen, a snack, a conversation, anything to avoid being alone with their thoughts. But Thomas didn't. He stayed with the silence. And in doing so, he built something few people ever do. Emotional strength. The strength to stay calm when insulted. The strength to sit with confusion without forcing answers. The strength to resist the urge to impress others with empty words. This is what psychologists call emotional non-reactivity, and it's one of the most powerful skills in business and life. Talk less, do more. Thomas also discovered something else during this transformation. Most people talk too much and do too little. He noticed how easy it was to fall into the habit of discussing goals instead of pursuing them, of announcing plans before taking action, of posting about the dream rather than building it. So he made a new rule for himself. Don't talk about it until I've taken the first step. That single change flipped a switch. Instead of burning energy on explaining, he focused it on executing. And the more he acted in silence, the more momentum he built. He stopped measuring success in words and started measuring it in results. The real legacy is in action. People eventually noticed. Not because Thomas talked more, but because he produced more. His projects succeeded. His team thrived. His ideas worked. And soon, others followed his lead, choosing calm, deliberate execution over noise and flash. Because here's the truth. Talkers impress crowds. Doers change the game. Silent achievers leave a legacy. Final thought: silence leads. Action follows. Thomas's walk in the rain wasn't magic. It was the result of a deeper principle. That silence is not the opposite of action. It's the beginning of it. He understood what most people never do. That wisdom comes not from constant input, but from quiet reflection. That strength is forged not in applause, but in stillness. That success doesn't shout. It whispers first, then shows up boldly when it matters. And so can you. End of Part 3 next. Disciplined silence builds emotional fortitude. Part 4. Part 4. The Storm and the Still Man Hook. When the stock crashed, everyone panicked, except for one man. He didn't shout. He didn't scramble. He simply stood up, adjusted his jacket, and made a single phone call. That call saved his company. When asked later how he stayed so calm, his answer shocked everyone. I train in silence. The man's name was Malcolm Rhodes. Co. Decorated Marine. Son of a factory worker. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room. In fact, in meetings he often said the least. But when the crisis hit, everyone looked to him. Why? Because Malcolm had something rare, emotional fortitude. The kind that doesn't crumble under pressure. The kind that keeps its head while others lose theirs. The kind that's built, not born, and built in silence. The world respects the quietly dangerous Malcolm understood a truth that very few ever grasp. The loudest man in the room is often the weakest. The strongest are the ones who don't need to speak to prove anything. He called it the quiet warrior principle. When others yelled, he listened. When others boasted, he observed. When others flinched, he acted, calm, clear, and unstoppable. And it wasn't because he was emotionless. It was because he was trained. Discipline in peace prepares you for war. Malcolm didn't wait for chaos to start preparing. He began every morning the same way. Silence, stillness, strategy. 5 a.m. Sit in silence. 5:30 a.m. Visualize the day's challenges. 6:00 a.m. Cold shower. 6:30 a.m. Execute without excuse. He treated every day like it was game day. Especially the boring ones. Because he believed. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your preparation. And his preparation happened in silence.no's social media. No morning chaos. Just pure mental sharpening. That's how he built emotional armor. Layer by layer, decision by decision, morning by morning. Silence builds self-control, and self-control wins. Malcolm told a young intern once. You'll know you've grown when you can sit in a room alone without reaching for your phone, and just be. That may sound simple, but it's rare. Most people can't go 10 minutes without stimulation. They panic in boredom. They run from their own thoughts. And that's dangerous, because a man who can't sit still for 5 minutes won't last 5 seconds under fire. Silence is where self-control is born. Self-control is where real power begins. When your emotions are in check, your decisions get sharper. Your presence grows stronger. Your leadership becomes magnetic. That's why Malcolm's team trusted him in crisis, not just for his ideas, but for his calm. The calm mind sees what chaos blinds. In the middle of that stock market crash, while others made panicked moves, Malcolm did something simple, but brilliant. He walked to the window and stared at the skyline for 3 full minutes. No notes, no laptop. Just silence. Then he turned, picked up the phone, and called a partner firm. He made a calculated trade that stabilized the company and doubled their long-term position. When asked how he saw that move so clearly, he replied, "Because I got quiet enough to see the truth. Panic clouds vision. Calm reveals it. Train in silence to win in public." You don't become a calm leader by accident. You become one by training in the quiet. Just like a soldier trains in the dark so he can fight in the light, the successful man builds discipline in the shadows. Long before anyone's watching. Here's how Malcolm trained. 1. 30 minutes of stillness daily. Not meditation. Not music. Just sitting. Listening. Observing himself. 2. No emotional reactions for 24 hours. If someone insulted him, he paused. If something went wrong, he waited before responding. 3. Weekly discomfort challenge. Cold showers. Hard workouts. Fasting. Anything to build his ability to endure. He knew that emotional strength is like a muscle. And silence is the gym. The silent man is the most dangerous in the room. People began to notice something unusual about Malcolm. He didn't argue. He didn't defend his worth. He didn't chase applause. And yet, his presence commanded attention. Why? Because he had internal gravity. People are drawn to those who need nothing from them. His power didn't come from titles or bravado. It came from control. of his mind, of his emotions, of his time. When you stop reacting to everything, you stop giving away your power. And that's what Malcolm had mastered. Let the world make noise. You make moves. Point one day, during a leadership retreat, a junior executive asked Malcolm, "How do you always know what to do?" Malcolm smiled and said, "I don't always know. But I always slow down. The world moves fast, hoping you'll panic. I move slow so I can strike true." That's the lesson most miss. Speed isn't strength. Silence is. Anyone can talk fast, post often, respond instantly. But that's noise. Power is found in the man who can pause, wait, breathe, and then act with force and precision. Your turn. Become the quiet warrior. You don't need to be a CEO or a Marine to live like Malcolm. You just need to start training in silence. Try this. Sit in silence for 10 minutes today. No phone. No input. Just you. Delay one emotional reaction. When triggered, pause. Breathe. Respond later. Do one uncomfortable thing on purpose. Not for the result, but for the resilience. You'll feel the shift. You'll notice how much noise you've been tolerating, how much control you've been giving away, and how powerful you feel when you simply don't react. Final word. When you master yourself, you master life. The world will always shout, panic, beg for your attention. But when you choose silence, you choose strength. When you stop reacting, you start creating. And when you discipline your mind, emotions, and responses, you become untouchable. Be the calm in the chaos. Be the stillness in the storm. Be the quiet warrior. End of part 4. Next. Why success requires solitude. Part 5. Part 5. The power of being alone. Hook. He built a billion-dollar company from a log cabin in the mountains. No team. No meetings. No noise. Just a man, a notebook, and a vision. That man was James Ironheart McRae. And what he discovered in solitude turned him from a forgotten dropout into a legend. In a world full of notifications, noise, and non-stop talking, one thing has become rare, and yet more powerful than ever: solitude. Not loneliness. Not isolation. But intentional aloneness. The kind where your mind clears, your vision sharpens, and your inner genius finally speaks. That's where James found his power. How a quiet cabin built a giant. At age 29, James had nothing. Fired from 2 startups, divorce, bank account, $147.22, mentally burned out, spiritually empty. He disappeared from social media, left his apartment, and drove 400 miles north to an old hunting cabin in Montana. No phone signal. No Wi-Fi. Just firewood, canned food, and a stack of blank notebooks. Friends said he went crazy, but James knew something they didn't. The noise was killing my mind. I needed to go where my thoughts could breathe. And in that silence, something extraordinary happened. Solitude awakens the inner voice. For the first 3 days, James felt restless. The silence was loud. The boredom was painful. The urge to scroll, check, talk, almost unbearable. But on day 4, something shifted. He stopped fidgeting. He started listening, and a calm idea, small and soft, whispered itself into his mind. That idea became the foundation for what would later grow into Clearform, a digital productivity platform that now serves over 22 million users. But it never would have been born in chaos. It needed quiet. It needed room. It needed solitude. Your greatest ideas are already inside you. James believes most people aren't short on creativity or potential. They're just drowning in noise. They can't hear their own brilliance because they never turn the world off. Think about it. How often do you give yourself even 15 minutes of real silence? No phone, no conversation, no background music, just you, thinking, dreaming, planning? Most people never do. And that's why they feel stuck. You don't need more input. You need more inner access. The most successful people have one thing in common: they retreat to think. Why every champion has a cave. Napoleon Hill wrote in Think and Grow Rich. All impulses of thought have a tendency to clothe themselves in their physical equivalent. But that only works if you give those impulses space to surface. That's why high achievers, from writers to CEOs to spiritual leaders, schedule time alone. They know that solitude isn't luxury, it's fuel. Bill Gates had think weeks in the woods. Nikola Tesla spent hours alone visualizing inventions. Steve Jobs would walk alone to solve product problems. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert before changing the world. What do they all have in common? They left the crowd to lead the crowd. The solitude ritual. How to unlock your genius. James Ironheart McRae came back from that cabin with a system, a ritual he uses to this day. He calls it the solitude window. 1. 20 minutes daily silence. Just sit and think. No goals. Just observe your mind. Insight always comes, eventually. Point 2. Weekly 2-hour solo walk. Leave your phone. Take a pen. Walk. Let your brain untangle what the week tied up. Point 3. Monthly deep isolation. 1 full day, off-grid. No work. Just reflect, read, reset. This is where the big answers come, and he credits these 3 things, more than any strategy or app, for building his billion-dollar idea. Why most people avoid solitude and stay average. Solitude reveals something uncomfortable. Your own thoughts. That's why most people run from it. They're afraid of what they'll hear in the silence. Regret, doubt, shame, unfulfilled dreams. But here's the truth. You can't escape what you refuse to face. And until you confront the noise inside you, you'll keep chasing distractions outside you. James says, success isn't found in the noise. It's born in the silence where you finally hear your soul speak. The man who masters solitude becomes unstoppable. Solitude isn't weakness. It's a weapon. When you practice being alone, you stop fearing what others think. You think more clearly. You make better decisions. You develop original ideas. You build emotional resilience. And here's the hidden gift. You become self-powered and no longer needy and no longer reactive and no longer chasing likes, approval, or applause. Instead, you create from within, boldly, bravely, freely. Final word, go where the noise ends if you want the kind of success that leaves a mark, not just money, but meaning, not just fame, but freedom, not just noise, but legacy. Then you must become comfortable being alone. Go for a walk today with no phone. Sit in a chair and stare out a window. Turn everything off and listen, not to podcasts or gurus, but to you. Because deep down, beneath the static of daily life, lies something extraordinary. Your clearest thoughts, your highest truth, your next great move. But you'll never hear them in the noise. You'll only find them in solitude. End of Part 5. Next. The Inner Circle Test. Part 6. Part 6. He had everything going for him: talent, vision, and drive. But one thing kept dragging him down: his friends. When Marcus cut them off, everything changed. 2 years later, he was a millionaire. The secret wasn't more hustle. It was better people. You can't fly surrounded by pigeons. Imagine planting the seed of an oak tree. But every day, you let people trample the soil, pour soda on the roots, and block the sunlight. Will that tree grow? Of course not. Now ask yourself this: what kind of people are surrounding the seed of your dream? Because here's the truth. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's not just a quote. It's a law of life. And if you want to rise, you must pass the inner circle test. The friend that almost killed the dream. At 23, Marcus had an idea to launch a fitness brand. He was passionate, disciplined, and committed. But his best friend, Jake, was the opposite. Slept till noon, laughed at Marcus's goals, called him try hard, and obsessed. Constantly said, just chill, man, it's not that serious. But Marcus stayed loyal. Why? Because they were boys since 7th grade. Because Jake was fun. Because it was hard to walk away. But over time, Marcus noticed something strange. He started procrastinating. He second-guessed his goals. He felt tired after every hangout. He doubted himself. More and more than one night, it hit him like a punch to the chest. I'm shrinking myself to stay comfortable for someone who isn't even trying to grow. That's when he decided to cut ties. And everything changed. The 3 types of people in your life, Napoleon Hill said. Every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to cut all sources of retreat. Sometimes, that means cutting people too. Here's how to tell who stays and who goes. 1. The lifters. These are your power sources. They encourage your dreams, challenge your comfort, want to see you win, remind you who you really are, keep them close. Double down. Point 2. The leaners, they aren't bad, but they drain you. Always need help, never take action, play the victim, avoid hard truths, limit exposure. Protect your energy. Point 3. The limiters, these are dangerous. They mock growth, compete instead of support, pull you down with guilt or drama, fear your success because it exposes their laziness, cut them off. Now, with love, but with finality, you need an inner circle that makes you rise. Marcus didn't just leave Jake. He built a new circle, and that made all the difference. He found people who were obsessed with goals, talked about ideas, not gossip, celebrated wins without jealousy, held him accountable, not back. One friend told him, "You're not posting enough content." Another said, "Let's do a 30-day challenge." Another helped him build his first website for free. That's what the right circle does. They don't just like your goals, they accelerate them. Your circle is either a cage or a catapult. Want to know why you feel stuck? Why you keep hesitating? Why your motivation dies in waves? Look at your 5 closest people. Are they dreamers or doubters, builders or complainers, winners or watchers? If you're surrounded by fear, comfort, or laziness, don't be shocked when your life looks the same. Environment beats willpower. You can't force your way out of a low circle forever. Eventually, they'll drag you back down to their level, unless you rise up and choose a new one. How to pass the inner circle test? Do this exercise today. It will change everything. 1. Write down your 5 closest people: friends, family, coworkers, anyone you spend consistent time with. Point 2. For each person, ask, do they inspire me? Do they hold me accountable? Do they grow or stay stuck? Do they support my mission? 3. Then decide, close or limited contact, cut off completely and act accordingly. Not emotionally, strategically. You're building a legacy, not a social club. This isn't cruel, it's necessary, people will say. But that's your cousin. But she's been your best friend forever. But he needs you. Here's the truth. Your future doesn't care about guilt. Your destiny doesn't wait for dead weight. Your dream can't breathe in toxic company. You can love people from afar, but you cannot sacrifice your growth for their comfort. Marcus didn't hate Jake. He simply outgrew him. And guess what? Years later, Jake reached out. He was inspired. He had changed. Now they talk again, with mutual respect. But it never would have happened if Marcus stayed small just to fit in. Final word, you are the company you keep. Look at your circle, and you'll see your future. If they're broke, afraid, lazy, distracted, bitter, you'll become them, unless you choose differently. But if they're bold, focused, disciplined, inspired, you'll rise to match them. So build your circle with intentional precision, like your life depends on it. Because it does. End of part 6. Next, the law of long obedience. Part 7. Here is part 7, final part, of your motivational Napoleon Hill inspired series, written in a simple, emotional, story-driven style for your American audience. Title: The Law of Long Obedience, Part 7, Final. Subtitle: Success Doesn't Shout. It whispers daily. Hook: It's not the guy who's loud on day 1 who wins. It's the one who's quietly consistent on day 100. The world crowns the man who keeps going. Long after motivation dies, long after applause fades, long after everyone else quits. This is the law no one wants to follow. But the few who do, they win. The forgotten path to greatness. We live in a world of fast. Fast likes, fast money, fast dopamine, fast advice, and because of that, people give up fast too. They say, "I've been working for 3 weeks, I don't see results. I posted 10 times, no one cares. I started this business, it's too slow." So they quit, and that's why they stay average. Because the real secret, success isn't for the fast. It's for the faithful. The man who dug for 3 years. Andre wanted to build a business teaching kids how to code. He had a passion, a plan, and a deep why. So he quit his job and jumped in. Year 1, crickets. He made $213 total. Friends laughed behind his back. Even his dad said, "You sure this is a real job?" Year 2, a little momentum. A few clients trickled in. But bills kept piling up. His credit card hit its limit. He almost gave up. But something deep inside whispered, obedience to the vision is greater than excitement for the moment. So he kept digging. Year 3, a school district licensed his course. A YouTuber promoted his story. His inbox blew up. He made $187,000 in 10 months. Not because he was lucky, but because he obeyed the process. Every single day. The 3 lies that kill consistency. If you want to obey the long road, you have to kill the lies that try to drag you off it. Lie number 1. It should be faster. No, it shouldn't. Growth is like a tree. You don't see the roots growing, but they're anchoring deep. What looks like nothing is often the most important stage. Lie number 2. No one is watching. God is. Your future self is. Your calling is. And someone is always watching quietly, waiting for you to prove you're serious. Stay ready. Lie number 3. I'm tired. Of course you are. That's what makes it meaningful. If it didn't cost anything, it wouldn't be worth anything. The daily grind is the holy ground. The world celebrates the moment of victory, but heaven celebrates the moments no one sees. When you wake up tired and still do the work, when you post even when the algorithm ignores you, when you study the chapter even if it bores you, when you pray, plan, sweat, and show up. Again, that's long obedience. And that's the birthplace of greatness. Your dream is a covenant, not a shortcut. When you commit to a big vision, you're entering a covenant with your future. You're saying, no matter how long this takes, I won't walk away. Not because it's fun, not because you're addicted to the grind, but because you were called. People say, don't burn out. But sometimes you have to burn down your old life, build a new one. And yes, it will cost you time, sleep, comfort, and maybe relationships. But you'll gain something eternal: discipline, focus, confidence, freedom. The final question: can you be trusted with the long road? Anyone can start. The question is, can you stay? Can you build for 1,000 days without applause? Can you sacrifice weekends for a future only you can see? Can you wake up and try again after 19 failures? That's the real test. And most will fail it. But if you pass, you become unstoppable. Because success is never owned. It is earned through daily, quiet, consistent obedience. Final words. Your future is waiting at the finish line. Andre didn't win because he was brilliant. He won because he stayed in the game. You don't need to be special. You don't need to be loud. You need to be faithful. Your calling. Your work. Your vision. Every day, every task, every step, obey the path, and one day, your name will be whispered in rooms you never entered. If this story lit something inside you, don't let it fade. Backhand index pointing right like this video if you're choosing discipline over distraction. Speech alone. Comment below with, I choose the long path. If you're ready to build real success step by step, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story that could shift your mindset and change your future.